alguien ahí? Alzas el candelabro, escrutas la penumbra y tragas saliva. Una titánica figura con los brazos extendidos y las alas desplegadas flota, suspendida y amenazadora, frente a ti. Sabes que es solo una máquina, pero te recorre un escalofrío. Ahogas un grito. ¿Lograrás escapar? El ángel de metal tiñe tu alrededor de tinieblas. No deberías haber ido al ala oeste. Te lo prohibieron. Te lo advirtieron. No deberías haber entrado ahí bajo ningún concepto. El ala oeste. Ahora que has descubierto el terrible secreto que esconde la mansión de Cravenmoor, una voz susurra a tus espaldas. ¿Podrás escapar de sus amenazadoras garras? Querida Irene, no me hagas mucho caso. El mar tiene estas cosas. Todo lo devuelve después de un tiempo, especialmente los recuerdos. Las luces de septiembre.
It's interesting that the first few novels that you wrote were classified as young adult, and then the next four were classified as adult. And I wondered whether you consciously sat down to write these books for specific audiences, you know, young adult or adult audiences, or whether that's not such a big, clear division in your mind when you're writing.
To me, it was more of an accident, really. The first book I published over 20 years ago won in Spain at the time a big award for young adult literature that came with a load of cash. And at the time, of course, I was trying to survive as a writer and make it. And I think I was so aware of how hard it is to survive as a writer, to make a living, just to stay there and don't fall down the drain. That the fact that I unexpectedly had found success in a field that I never thought was going to be mine, because I never planned to be a young adult writer. I didn't even understand the genre that well. To me, readers were readers. And if you like to read, you could be 10 years old or 90. And I never really fully believed in the separations of genres. When I thought of myself as a young reader, I thought, when I was a kid, I would never read something that was labeled young adult or for kids. I would read whatever I wanted to read. And so at the time, I had a conflicting feeling about it, because I found this success with this first book for young adults, and then the book was doing very well and has been doing very well ever since. And I think because of that, I kind of, maybe subconsciously or not, or just out of trying to be very conservative and very cowardly, I kept on writing books for young people because I had found success there, and I thought that I could make a way there. The problem is the more I advanced down that line, the more I felt I was kind of first betraying myself, and in a way betraying the readers, because I felt that it wasn't really a writer for kids. So.
I was looking at a website today which had a list of suggestions of what you have to include in what they call a crossover novel, something that's going to appeal to both young adults and adults for it to be successful. And it included have at least one teenage character and make things more complex, not less. And it seems to me, you've ticked both of those boxes, haven't you?
Well, this is wisdom after the fact, I think. Right now, I think there are a lot of theories. They found that right now, young adult literature is one of the main markets in publishing around the world. Back then, when I published my first novel that was labeled young adult, even the expression young adult novel didn't exist. They were called books for children. This was before the internet, many years before Harry Potter and Twilight and the Hunger Games and all these very popular. And this was before these things that you find now in American bookstores that says is a huge section called paranormal teen romance, where you find these kind of mysteriously sexy vampires in high school. And I look at those books and I think, oh my God, this is the end of the world. It's...
You don't think, I must put a vampire in my next book.
I think the human race has like 6 months. It can't have any more. If this is what it's in bookstores, you get this sense sometimes. And the thing you learn quick when writing for young people and do your best, because young readers can be the best audience you have because they're sincere, they're not snobby, they're not conditioned, but they're merciless. They won't stay with you one line more if you're not doing your job just because somebody said your book is good, or because you have an award, or because a review says that you have to think that that book is good. They don't buy that stuff. They start reading and saying, okay, and you're out of
Back
the picture.
Back to the computer.
So it is a good school in a way. When Shadow of the Wind was going to be published in Spain many years ago, I remember that everybody in publish told me repeatedly that this was the most un-Spanish book conceivable, that it was impossible to sell such a book in Spain, that nobody would read it, that it had nothing to do with the Spanish literary tradition, that they didn't know what it was. There was a reviewer, one of the main reviewers in one of the main papers, that took 4 years to review the book because he said that he had to read it 5 times because he could not understand it and he could not write a review about it. All of this sounds ridiculous and comical, but all of this was going on at the time. By now, Shadow of the Wind is probably the most successful Spanish novel of all time, so it has become a cliché to say, oh yes, of course. It was not when it was published, in which it was a novel that was only accepted in Spain after it was a huge success outside of Spain.
So the book is set as a game in many ways. There are many games in the Angels game, and one of them is with the reader, and it said that you have to step into the story at some point and interpret it. And you can interpret the story in different ways. And each one of these ways clicks. But depending on what you're bringing into the game, the result is different. This also makes the story, I think, confusing for some readers, because as opposed to Shadow of the Wind, the story is not telling you where everything is. It's not taking you by the hand. It takes you by the hand for a while, but then it kicks you into the labyrinth and closes the door and shuts down the lights. And then you find out that inside of that place there are things that are approaching you. You say, what the hell is this? That it's part of the idea. And I knew that it was going to be a much darker story that would upset some readers, especially because coming from Shadow of the Wind, people would expect maybe that the Angels game would be exactly the same, that would be sweeter or more romantic, because the Shadow of the Wind, even though it has a lot of drama in it, it's essentially a story of redemption, while the Angels game is a story of damnation. The Shadow of the Wind is what you would call a feel-good story. The Angels game is a feel-bad story. It makes you feel bad about the world. It makes you feel bad about yourself, which is something that, if editors hear, they just slash their throats or just say, okay, that's it, I quit. I don't want to touch that book. But
El juego del ángel nos conducirá a través de un laberinto de secretos a un lugar que nunca hubiéramos podido sospechar.